Welcome to Season 2, Episode 1 of the Coffee District Podcast. Today we're joined by Martin Rowland of Rwenzori Coffee Suppliers, and we'll be talking about coffee farming in Uganda, coffee processing, the challenges of importing, and what it's like to live in the Lake District. Now, Martin likes to talk, so myself and Jiri, we might have an easy morning. If you'd like to check out any of the coffees we'll talk about today, please look at darkhouse.co.uk/shop.
So when into first episode came Martin Rowland from Rwenzori Coffee. Hello Martin and welcome here.
Hello, thank you. Nice to be here.
So we know each other for quite a while because you supply in Dark House with your great coffee. But I wanted to always ask, how did you got into the coffee, or what was the main thing?
Well, I've certainly only been in the coffee sector for the last 4 or 5 years, and it was really because of what my son Johnny was doing. He went to Uganda and to do some agricultural work and to set up a business, AgriEvolve, and when he went to Uganda, he didn't know that he would be involved in the coffee sector, but meeting farmers, talking to farmers, many of them were coffee farmers, and they asked if he could help find a better market for their coffee. So that's the start of it. He did that. He found people in Kampala, the capital of Uganda, involved in the coffee sector, and they encouraged him because Johnny is living and working in a part of Uganda where this large coffee company wasn't active. So for them it was an opportunity to expand into this area, the Rwenzoris, which is in the far west of Uganda. So Johnny started working with the coffee farmers, found a good market for them, started providing some training and support for them, and it's gone very well. So that was about 5 years ago. We started bringing coffee into the UK 3 years ago, and I suppose my involvement has increased significantly since then. Obviously, living in the UK, I was able to travel around, meet wonderful people such as yourself and many others in the coffee sector, introduce them, offered samples, and the response has been very positive. So the first batch of coffee I brought in was 2 tons, and that seemed a massive amount in those days, but we found buyers for it. We're now up to about 40 tons a year, so it's obviously going very well. The response has been very positive.
So is it, because I'm getting a little bit confused sometimes, is it a Rwenzori Coffee or AgriEvolve? What's the main bit?
The company is called AgriEvolve.
That company is called AgriEvolve, yeah. Okay.
We decided to use the name Rwenzori Coffee as a trading name.
Okay.
So there's no separate organisation. We are AgriEvolve. Mm-hmm. That was the name of the business that Johnny and I set up 6 years ago when Johnny went to Uganda. When we started importing, we thought, well, we need a name with coffee in it at least, mm-hmm. And because it's from the Rwenzoris. So yeah, it's a difficult word to pronounce when people look at it, and then it starts R-W-E-N. Some people struggle to pronounce it, but it's you start with Ru, as in kangaroo. So
I guess you get in very. This is quite a common thing in the coffee, isn't it? All the coffee, like most of the coffee farms, have a kind of different names. The regions have kind of strange names, which kind of are unpronounceable for normal British people.
Yes, that's true. There are many regions in the coffee producing world, obviously. I think I struggle to pronounce Yugoshev, and maybe even now I'm not pronouncing it quite right, but that's obviously a well-known region in Ethiopia, and we are very strongly of the opinion that Rwenzori will become just as well known as Yugoshev. So Rwenzori, the Rwenzori Mountains, is quite a big area. It's a mountain range stretching for about 120 miles north to south, 20 miles wide, and it forms the boundary, the border between Uganda in the west and the Democratic Republic of Congo.
So is it not partly touching the Rwanda as well?
It reaches down towards Rwanda. So if you go only 50 or 60 miles south from where we're based and at the southern end of the Rwenzoris, you're into Rwanda. And then, of course, not much further down, Burundi. And then you got DR Congo on one side, Kenya on the other side. Tanzania is also bordering Uganda. So Uganda is in the midst of the East Africa origin. Ethiopia, obviously just the other side of Kenya. But of all those countries, if you talk about East African coffee producing countries, Uganda is often not well known. Everybody's heard of Kenyan coffee, Rwandan, Burundian, Ethiopian, of course. But Uganda's a bit of an up-and-coming player, but it's very much East African and shares the same climate and the same geography as those other countries. And those of us who are working and involved there would say it's better than all the others. The mountain range is a colossal range, altitude ranging from 1,300 to over 2,000 meters in the sort of the band where people live and work and grow their coffee. The actual mountains, the top of the mountains, over 5,000 meters. And although it's decreasing, there's permanent snow right at the top of the Rwenzoris. And again, that's just an incredible fact. We're only a few miles north of the equator, and yet we're only also 20 miles south of permanent snow if you were to go to the top of the mountains. So it's an amazingly beautiful, fascinating region to be based in, and great coffee coming from there, obviously.
Not as many people know about, actually.
No. It's
funny.
It's great. We've got something really special to tell the world about. And if the coffee wasn't good, it would be difficult. But the coffee is really something quite special, and we have a great story to tell.
So, what did you do before you started with the coffee? What did you work at?
Well, myself, I went to Uganda back in 1987. I studied agriculture, and specifically tropical agriculture. I applied to an organisation to see if they had any jobs in the tropics. They said, "Oh, well, there's this job in Uganda." Okay. I didn't know very much about it. The only thing I knew about Uganda at the time was that Idi Amin was a notable and figure within the history of Uganda. He had obviously gone at that point. AIDS, though, was an increasing issue. Those are the two main things people knew about Uganda back in the 80s. But anyway, my wife and I, we went on a 4-year contract and really enjoyed it. It's an amazing country, wonderful people, and we were involved in agriculture, just in a very modest way. So fast forward best part of 25, 30 years, my younger son, Johnny, also went to study agriculture, and as young people do, he said, "Dad, can I go and visit the project that you were working at in Uganda?" So he went off whilst he was a student to spend a couple of months visiting the place that I'd worked in the Rwenzoris. Really enjoyed it. As soon as he came back, he'd booked another trip out. So he started just by helping out as a volunteer with the same project that I was based at. But during that time, he recognized and realized that he wanted to set up his own business, working with the farmers, and that the real route to sustainable and long-lasting development would be to work from a business footing rather than perhaps a sort of a charitable one. So AgriEvolve was established as a business, as a social enterprise, so as a business with a social aim, but very much based on a strong business model to survive, to be sustainable, important word there. AgriEvolve has to be a sustainable business, a profitable business, but at the same time with that aim to work with the local Ugandan coffee farmers to help them improve their productivity to help them get access to better markets, get a better price. And all those things have happened. The farmers are getting much more money now than they did prior to us establishing in this particular part of the Rwenzoris. So it's working well.
Yeah, and Martin, how have you found that transition into the coffee industry? How have you found it as an industry to get into? How's the culture?
It's an amazing industry. I have gone around cold calling on lots of different people, like Jiri and so many others, and I've just been met with great warmth and enthusiasm and interest, and nobody has closed the door on me, told me to go away. It's a fascinating sector to be involved with. It's very complex. The more you get into coffee, the more complex you realise it is. But it's just a wonderfully sort of all-embracing sector to be involved with. I think it's amazing.
Yeah, and it's still growing, isn't it? It's still evolving. That's the interesting thing about it. Like you say, there's still lots going on. Farming is improving, roasting is improving. So it's an exciting industry to be involved in, I think.
Absolutely, yeah. You can't stand still. You've always got to be looking out for new developments. Simply as an importer, linked very closely to the production end. When I hear that roasters are interested in these new sort of carbonic macerations and fermentation processes in order, for the coffee, then I can feed that back and to the team in Uganda, and that's an area that we are experimenting in and trying to see if we can develop the quality of the coffee by using different processing techniques.
Decaffeination, Martin.
Right.
Decaffeination.
Okay.
That's what we need.
Yes. Decaffeination. Yeah. Well, we need to look into that a bit more, but certainly we're happy to do that.
Just to say, it's not enough of decaf in the country. Always, like every time you have sometimes, you have obviously companies like Falcon who supply decaf from all around the world, or Olam, but the quality of the decaf is not as good. And then you have companies like Raw Material who supply amazing decaf. So we need to get somebody in the middle who import in the UK nice decaf from Africa, which would be quite nice. So please.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm sure there's a business opportunity there. As I say, we if there's a demand for a product, we'll see if we can fill that gap.
But wasn't the originally I think we talked about it before, but wasn't Ugandan coffee always graded kind of off coffee or not really good coffee for the exporting? I think it was, wasn't it? Because there were some problems with the beans of the cherries or something.
Yeah. Well, what Johnny found when he started looking into how the farmers were producing the coffee was that they were effectively being ripped off. I think probably. I was trying to think of a more.
Don't be nice. Don't worry.
Okay. So, first of all, just got to point out that the coffee farmers in Uganda are all smallholder farmers. They're all people with maybe 1.5, 2 acres of land. So we're not talking about large commercial farms. So many people living in the Rwenzoris grow coffee, and they have done for 70, 80, 90 years since the colonial days when they were advised or encouraged to plant coffee. But in recent years, the whole sector hasn't worked very efficiently. So when I was in Uganda in the 1980s, the government was in control of the coffee sector. So all coffee had to be sold to the government. Coffee farmers would take their coffee, hand it over, get a little chit, a little bit of paper saying, yes, you have supplied 50 kilos of coffee. We owe you a certain amount of money. And they would take that chit and wait 6 months, a year before they actually got any cash. So it wasn't an efficient system. In the 90s, the coffee sector was liberalised. So this was a decision by the Ugandan government, a very forward-looking one, I think. So that enabled outside companies to come in and start operating in the coffee sector. So a few big players set up and started doing that. But the whole system relied very much on local traders buying the coffee from the farmers and then trading it up. So the coffee would maybe pass through 4 or 5 hands from the village into the town, from the town to a bigger town towards Kampala. And because there was very little or no support being provided to the farmers or guidance as to how to do this properly, there was no incentive for them to try and achieve a high quality coffee. So they would often just strip the coffee bushes, harvesting red and green coffee at the same time, because of course this is one of the complexities of coffee. The crop doesn't all ripen at the same time. So whilst there are some ripe cherries on the bushes, there'll be a lot of underripes, green ones that aren't ready for picking. But the farmers would often just strip the whole lot off. So you're starting then with something that isn't as good as it should be. Then they would tend to dry the coffee on the ground, picking up dirt and maybe getting rained on, molds developing. So all of the time, the inherent quality of the coffee was being degraded. So then the traders would only pay a small amount. And because they were only paying a small amount, there was no incentive for the farmers to do any better. It was a sort of a system based on the ignorance in some ways, that nobody knew that they were degrading a product rather than increasing it.
So how do you think this changed? Like, what was the first hint it might be good coffee there somehow?
Well, we knew that there was potentially good coffee. The company that Johnny got in touch with knew the potential. It's just that they hadn't got the manpower to do anything. They were concentrating in the eastern side of the country, and they weren't really active in the western side. But in the eastern side, they'd done a similar thing. They would started providing training. Field officers would go around the farmers and tell the farmers, encourage the farmers to harvest in a better way and offer better prices for a better product. So this is what we did in the Rwenzoris. We made it very clear to the farmers that we would pay a good price, but it had to be for ripe cherries. So in East Africa, nearly all the coffee is hand-picked. As I say, one way of doing it is just to strip the whole branch, put your hand at one end, just pull everything off, but it doesn't produce a good product. You really have to pick every red cherry off and leave the green ones on so that they can mature and be ready later.
Which is a huge amount of work, isn't it?
It is, it's massive. I mean, I've just been picking some black currants at home in my garden, and picking them off one at a time, I really do get a much deeper appreciation of what the coffee farmers are having to do on a day-by-day basis. I can pick blackcurrants for an hour and feel quite exhausted.
I just feel like how the farmers must feel when I'm trying to fill 1 kilo bag and 6 beans escape and somehow drop on the ground, how the farmer would feel. Like, it's a 3 minutes of my time which I just lost because you are.
Yeah, I mean, as a roaster, you're obviously well involved in the sector, but I think for the coffee drinking public at large, sometimes they don't really understand the massive amount of work that's gone into producing this crop and the complexity of it all. So I guess before AgriEvolve were involved, the farmers would be picking and drying the cherries themselves, but they'd be drying it on the floor, not ideal. So we, together with this company we've been working with, we say to the farmers, sell us your red cherries. We'll pay you a very good price for your red cherries, but then we will do the processing. So the cherries are brought to our central coffee processing station, and there we dry them on raised beds, so there's good ventilation. The cherries are turned 2 or 3 times a day, so they ripen and in an even way. And we also watch out for the rain. And if it is going to rain, if it does rain, then these coffees get covered. Initially, we just started doing this by using sheets of polythene, but then we actually put up some polytunnels so that the cherries were drying permanently under cover, so the rain couldn't spoil them. And we ended up producing something that when it was hulled and cupped and tested, people were saying, hey, this is rather special.
Which is actually true, because we have it right now. We have a Mahango, which is one of your latest coffees, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite good.
Yeah,
Like it today?
I really enjoyed it. Yeah, it had lovely fruit flavours coming through. So yeah, definitely well picked and processed and well roasted.
Yeah. I think it's a very well balanced coffee. It's
great.
It's a very satisfying coffee, isn't it? It leaves you feeling good because it's not jarred in any way. It's smooth and balanced and fruity.
Yeah, we had a few coffees over the years from you. Well, over the last 2 years, because we cooperated. We opened 2020, which was the time when you brought the first lot, which was Kisinga and Kalinga.
Oh yeah,
which were amazing coffees. I'm still waiting for the next Kalinga to come.
Okay,
because it became my most favorite coffee. I accidentally found yesterday in the deep freeze last small 100 grams of Kalinga. So I defrosted it and just got it, and it was just amazing cup.
Okay,
it tastes like you can still get a little bit of a lychee taste. There was in the back a little bit of like a lychee, which was truly amazing.
Okay.
But yeah, there was Kisinga, Ibanda, which is back now, isn't it?
We have a new Ibanda.
Next Ibanda. And then you started to do Bugoya as well, did you? Which is the first wash coffee.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, all those names that you've reminded me of there are names of villages and communities where we are active in our work. So each of those are place names. And traditionally in this area, farmers use the natural process, which is simply picking the cherries and drying them in the sun, and then hulling when the cherries have been fully dried. But obviously the other main method of processing coffee is the wash process, where the flesh is removed and then the coffee is dried in the parchment. So this is a process that we encouraged and introduced. It gives a slightly different type of coffee, different consistency, and so yeah, we've started bringing wash coffees into the UK and other places, and it's a different process, so it gives a different result. But again, I think it's going down very well. Some people like naturals, but some coffee drinkers don't, and for them, a wash coffee is more. What's the word? It's sort of
enjoyable, or do you mean like more like they prefer to get the washed rather than, or the wet process rather than the natural? Because I found quite a lot of people starting not getting sick, but kind of getting bored of naturals.
Right.
They want to try different washed coffees just because they find washed coffees are something which slowly fade in. Because of the new methods such as carbonic maceration and all these new methods. So the wet process will be something which will be behind such as natural, so they want to enjoy it now.
Yeah. I think that the greater percentage of coffee produced for throughout the world is washed. So
Is it? Well, I think it's not, because in Brazil most of coffee is natural.
Right, okay.
And that's the biggest exporter of the coffee in the world. So.
Yeah, right.
Well, it's just what I think.
Yeah, you're very probably right. I suppose I'm reflecting more on
the small regions, or like the other regions than the main exporters.
I was just under the impression that,
Okay.
that the washed was the sort of most typical, the normal type of approach.
I guess.
That gives, because the natural process tends to often be described as funky, for example, and some people like it. I speak to roasters, and they say that a lot of some of their customers will like the funky naturals, but many of them prefer the more sort of stable, the more consistent, middle of the road type washed. And I'm sure there are excellent washed, but the naturals tend to have this slightly sort of funkier characteristics to them.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting divide, isn't it? Because a lot of general coffee drinkers do prefer that wash because it's a bit easier to manage, it's a bit more palatable. And what I've found is generally people who drink a lot of coffee, such as a roaster or a barista or someone who's really into coffee, moves on to that natural because they want something a little bit different, something a little bit more challenging. So you get an interesting divide where perhaps roasters are more interested in buying a natural, but perhaps a coffee drinker is more interested in drinking a chocolatey washed coffee. It's a little bit sort of easier to go down, particularly when you consider how people make coffee at home. If you make coffee very well, then a natural is very tasty. But if you perhaps don't brew it as well as you could, you want something that's got a little bit more sort of give and take in it. Then a washed is a little bit easier to work with. I've always found.
Yeah.
Sorry, just a little break. We need to turn down the gain of Eddie because he was shouting too much.
It's called projecting, Jerry.
Yeah, well, I can hear you on all 3 microphones here now.
Okay. How are you finding the Begoya then? Yeah, Begoya is our main washed coffee up to now, though we've got some new ones coming in very soon.
Are you?
Yes.
New coffees coming. Great. What's going to be the new coffees?
Well, when you said you were looking forward to the next Kalingwe, I should have butted in straight away to say we have a Kalingwe on a boat that's in Portugal at the moment. That's only because it was dropped off there, and it's about to be picked up, and it should be landing in the UK later this week.
That's amazing.
So
it's a shame I just haven't really got through the Ugandan mango yet.
Yeah, this is from the fly season, so it was only harvested in March, April, so it is very fresh, so it's got plenty of time to sort of sit and mature a little bit. Kalingwe is a really nice area, quite close to where Johnny's living, and we've been buying coffee from the farmers there for 3 or 4 years, and so this next batch we picked it out as being a very good batch. It will maybe taste and have slightly different flavour notes from the one before. As I say, it's going to land this week, so we'll be getting samples. But certainly, when we sent it from Uganda, we assessed it as having a good score, 85 score, and well balanced, fruity.
That sounds amazing.
A good coffee to look forward to.
That sounds great. It sounds like the best coffee what people can have for the rest of the summer and for the autumn.
Yeah,
because you need fruit in autumn. But if it's well balanced, that's great because most of people tend to drink chocolatey coffee anyway. How do you find it? This thing that, especially like not in the cities, people tend to drink rather chocolatey coffees rather than fruity coffees. Does it have an impact in here? Like compared to other countries, let's say in Germany, people tend to drink like really acid coffees.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think it explains why most roasters will concentrate on Brazilian coffees for the offerings that they make to their customers, and I think Brazilian coffees with their chocolatey notes are sort of regarded as one of the main staples in a coffee blend, and East African, Ugandan coffee is used maybe only 20-30% to add that fruitiness to a blend, and it provides something special. So some of the roasters I'm supplying put the coffee that I supply to them into a blend to give it that fruitiness and brightness, and it complements the other coffees within the blend, produces a really good everyday drinking coffee. But yeah, you offer Ugandan as a single origin, meaning it's just offered as it is, not blended with anything else. And you'll have customers who really enjoy it, and others who try it and say, it's not for me.
Not many.
Right.
Not many. Most of people are like, oh, it was amazing. Most of people really enjoy it.
It's just such a pleasant drink, isn't it?
It is. But to be honest, we kind of seen it and we talk about it lately in the podcast we did before this one, did we? Like how people, when they are, especially in the smaller towns, when they have fruitier coffee, they tend to don't like it because they had the first encounter they had with it was wrong because there was barista which was probably not as skilled, didn't know how to do it, which completely spoiled the first kind of attempt to get into the fruitier or sweeter coffees, which then determine kind of how they're gonna feel about the coffees later on, which I think it's slowly improving. I have to say, like it's getting better, but there is still this like feeling that fruity coffees might be something extremely acid, which is not always true.
Yeah, I think balancing that acidity is one of the key challenges, for a modern barista. And I'd be interested, Martin, if you sort of pick and choose the roasters that you supply. Perhaps one roaster roasts a little bit darker. You might send them some more of your chocolatey coffees, perhaps a washed. You've got someone like Dark House Jiri who roasts a little bit lighter. Do you send them a natural? How do you balance that acidity in there?
Well, I simply offer what we've got, and roasters make their own choice. Obviously, I'm only importing coffee from the Rwenzoris, so I don't even import coffee from the east of Uganda, and all the coffee is Ugandan. So I don't offer a big choice to roasters, but I offer them a very sort of specialised product. And as I said, traditionally the farmers use the natural process, so that's easy and straightforward, and the farmers understand that. That's where we started. But a washed coffee offers alternatives. And we are AgriEvolve doesn't just send coffee to the UK. We send coffee to customers around the world, and in some of the places, they really want the consistency that a washed coffee gives. So that's what we produce. We have to produce what our customers want, and the coffee has the flexibility to be processed in different ways to give slightly different results. And for some roasters, they want the washed, and others like the naturals.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned earlier that you're sort of working with roasters and customers to feed back to the farmers, perhaps some different processing methods they could use. How receptive have you found the farms in Uganda as to sort of different methods?
The farmers are very receptive by and large, and they're very excited. They're very well motivated. If you think about it, 5 years ago they were getting paid a pittance by local traders who weren't interested in quality, they were just interested in volume, in quantity. The traders would pay a low price, but they wouldn't mind what they were buying. Because it was low price, the traders knew they could trade it up to other traders who eventually would reach the exporters, and then they would export that. But even the exports then were exporting a product with a low value. Coffees are priced on their quality. The exporters didn't pay the traders very much. The traders didn't pay the farmers very much. So the exporters didn't get very much when they sold it, but they got enough to make a bit of profit. It's the same as any product, really. If you then turn it around and say, well, look, we're going to improve the quality of this coffee so that it demands a better price. And we've started with the farmers. showing them, encouraging them, motivating them to produce a better coffee. The coffee starts, the coffee on the bush has wonderful inherent qualities. So if you take a lot of care, harvest it at the right time, process it in the good way, take a lot of care over it, get it to the customer in good time. That's another issue. We found that coffee was taking up to a year to reach the UK, so obviously it wasn't going to be in the best condition. So if you do all the right things, you get a very good quality product. If you don't have those quality standards, if you just accept the lowest standards, you're never going to get a good quality coffee. And that was what was happening before. The coffee just was very basic, didn't deserve a good price, didn't get a good price, the farmers weren't very motivated. Now that we've turned around, they're getting a much better price, they are planting coffee, they're taking a lot more care of their coffee plants, they're highly motivated now.
Yeah, that sounds good. And do you think that those higher prices have had a positive impact on the farmers and the farmers' lives and the farm that they have there?
Yeah, you've got to remember, these are smallholder farmers with 1 or 2 acres. They grow all their own food on their own land, and the coffee is something that they can grow for cash. So it's a typical cash crop, as it is in many East African countries. The main use that people have for the money they earn from selling their coffee is to send their children to school. So in Uganda, education is not free. You have to pay to send your children to school. If you don't have any money, you don't send your children to school. So your children remain uneducated and don't improve. If you ask parents throughout the world, every parent, it's their ambition, their hope, their dream that their children will have a better lot than they've had themselves. You do everything you can for your children. So Ugandan farmers want to send their kids to school, but sometimes they just can't afford it. What we're finding now is that they are able to do that. So I'm not saying that children didn't go to school before this, of course they did, but finding school fees has always been a challenge, and the Ugandan farmers now have a better resource, a better opportunity to let's say maybe send all of their children to school. Maybe in the past they could only afford to send 2 or 3 of their children. Families still tend to be quite large, maybe 4, 5, 6 or more children, and it's important that they all get the chance to go to school. I actually went into a school last time I was in Uganda, and I thought, I'll just ask the children, because I do this, I just sort of drop in, a bit like dropping in on coffee roasters, I'll just turn up. And being a white man, it's always quite a bit, this is sort of up the mountainside a little bit, where you won't get too many white people passing through, so it always causes a bit of a stir. And I like to talk to the children and just find out what they're learning. Just on an aside, a fascinating thing is that all the education is done in English. So you've got all these children whose main mother tongue, their tribal language, is not used in the school. They've got to try and learn things in English, and probably using a bit of an English-based curriculum. So it's not easy. Anyway, I asked these children, what is coffee? Your parents grow coffee. What's it for? And they were all very quiet, and eventually one little girl put her hand up and she said, "Please, sir, coffee is school fees." 4 words, coffee is school fees. I'm always going to remember that, because I thought, wow, what an insight. So for them, coffee wasn't a drink. Coffee was a means for their parents to pay the fees to send them to school. So even the children understood that coffee, the benefit of coffee for them, their family, was that the children were able to go to school. And that just touches on another point. The people in Uganda don't habitually drink coffee. It was an introduced crop back in the colonial days. They have never taken to it as a drink. If you go to their houses, they won't offer you coffee. They won't have a cup of coffee after their meal or with their meal or at coffee time. Coffee is not drunk by the local people, which is quite a challenge. the farmer's growing a crop and they don't really understand it as a product. They don't taste it. They don't understand the qualities that are required. It's difficult, isn't it? You need to have a good understanding of what you're growing, and coffee farmers have never really done that. It's just been, for them, something that grows on the trees that are there in their garden. They pick it, they sell it, and they hope they get enough money to send their kids to school.
Yeah, I think perhaps that's part of the education and that training that can be provided. What I've seen from farms in other countries is they've started to develop their own sort of in-house quality control. Perhaps people who understand coffee a little bit more and can taste it. And then what you get is on the farm, you can sort of understand your product a little bit better and work to improve it that way. So, it's something I think would be good to see in the future is more farms and more farmers, like you say, understanding the coffee, perhaps drinking it a little bit, understanding speciality and what makes a good quality coffee. And then they can start to implement that change on the farm.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's part of the training we're doing. We will brew some coffee and get the farmers to drink the coffee, and for many of them, it's the first time they've ever done that. So, yeah.
So how is it with the kind of security situation there? Is it like danger situation? Is it like because we know from Democratic Republic of Congo, which is just next to it, it's extremely dangerous country to go to.
Yeah.
And the gangs are there. The Rwanda wasn't, well, it's relatively safe now, but a couple years ago it still wasn't the best, like one of the best countries. So in this term, are the farmers somehow like affected with this? Are there like gangs who kind of raid in the farms and things like that, or is it kind of in a safe zone rather the Rwenzori?
Yeah, no, life is pretty safe and stable within Uganda. As you say, it's not far to the border, and obviously there are some pretty bad things happening in DR Congo, and that's very sad. Uganda has had its problems in the past. I referred to Idi Amin when we started, and the years of Idi Amin and Obote were years of fear for the local people. The president of Uganda, Museveni, he's been in power since '86.
He must be doing very well if he was elected so many times.
Well, yes. Some people will say that as he's stayed there for so long, he's obviously arranged things in his favour, perhaps, but he has brought stability to the country, and you can't deny that. So since 1986, they've had one president. He did introduce a very fair democratic system for government throughout the country, starting at the village level. So every village has a little community that are responsible for local matters, and then a representative from each of those communities reports up to the next level, the town level, and then the regional level. So it's a very good system.
So how different is it compared to where you've been there in 1981? Or
no, I was in there. I went in 1987, so I went very soon.
So you just went very soon when he started this change, basically.
That's right. In the early 80s, it was a very different place and not very stable or safe at all. But yeah, fortunately, since 1987, Uganda has had peace. There were problems in the north of the country for many years with rebel factions of the army causing issues and so on. But the Ugandan government is very well disciplined, and that everybody says that's the big difference. In the olden days, there was no discipline in the army, so you've got lots of soldiers, many of them young, with guns and very little discipline. And that leads to problems. So you've got a well-disciplined army now. I'm not saying the country is perfect in any ways, and as with many countries, there are allegations of corruption perhaps at times. But if you go and visit, I go 2 or 3 times a year. I have never really felt unsafe in any ways. The people are very hospitable, have a wonderfully welcoming outlook on life, very appreciative of what AgriEvolve is doing. So yeah, it's a good place. You should come and have a visit.
Certainly will. Or we shall come. Maybe.
Yeah.
The Coffee District. Another episode in Uganda will be interesting.
Yeah.
But Uganda's not only exporting coffee, is it? They export and also they grow all sorts of things. They grow tobacco, as far as I know. They grow broccoli, because you can see when you buy a broccoli in Lidl, you can just see on the back of the made in Uganda, like grown in Uganda.
Right. Okay. That's
all
fascinating.
sorts of other things.
Yeah.
You recently brought us the honey.
Yes.
From the farm. There was something interesting. So they using the bees which are basically around the coffee trees to make the honey from.
Farmers in the Rwenzoris they started, you go far enough back, they collected honey from wild beehives. Okay. So they would literally identify where there was a hive halfway up a tree. They would go and destroy the hive, and in the process harvest the honey, or the other way around, harvest the honey and in the process destroy the hive. The concept of using beehives was encouraged over many years. And in fact, when I was working in Uganda in the 80s, that was one of the projects that we were concentrating on, encouraging farmers to use hives. So again, you can have a traditional log hive that's simply a hollowed out log. You place it in your garden, on your farm, and you encourage the bees to use that, and then you can harvest your honey from that hive. There are also, you can make hives out of wood as a sort of typical beehive that we would think of if you sort of picture a wooden beehive, squarer or rectangular. So you can use a traditional log or an improved beehive, put these around your, on your land, and you'll find that bees will come and colonize, develop a colony, produce honey. Again, often it's a case of marketing. Honey is a high value crop, but for farmers in the Rwenzoris, it's always, as with everything, a case of trying to get that honey to a good market. The nearest town, where if you go into the supermarkets, you'll always find honey on sale, but that town is 25 miles from where our farmers are based. And of course there's transport and buses and things, but it's just the concept of getting something 25 miles, getting it into jars. So, a farmer can harvest his honey and, for example, put it into a big jerry can, but then who's going to put that honey into the jars to sell to supermarkets, who will then sell to the people? Not massively complex steps, but possibly beyond a typical farmer, or put it in a more positive way, for small-scale entrepreneurs, there's an opportunity to buy honey from farmers, jar it, and sell it. We started doing that in order to promote a good market for the beekeepers.
What about chocolate? I think we talked about it a couple of years ago. You said something about chocolate in Uganda. Yeah. Is this one of the other things?
Yeah, chocolate is grown in the Rwenzoris, and there is a company that processes the chocolate, and it actually processes it all the way into chocolate bars. It's a company called Latitude. It's run by an American guy who came and visited and decided to set up. So he's doing very similar to what we're doing, but he's doing it in the coffee sector. And again, excellent chocolate. And vanilla is another high-value crop that grows well. Remember this area, the Rwenzoris, just north of the equator, high rainfall, fertile soils, everything will grow well, most things. Pineapples, bananas, citrus fruits. You get a lot of pests and problems in that sense as well, because it's such a vibrant environment.
Well, it certainly sounds like a heaven for agriculturists.
Yes. It's often a case of what to do and what to focus on. cotton is grown, not so much in the hillsides, but just away from the hills, the hilly section. You've got some sort of flatter areas, and cotton is produced and exported. So you've got cash crops: cotton, coffee, vanilla, cocoa, chocolate. But then people are growing cassava, matoke, the cooking bananas, beans, maize, vegetables. All those are grown for food crops. So it's it's very complex. It's certainly not monoculture. It's very, very diverse.
And how does coffee compare with those other cash crops then? Is it one of the main cash crops? Is it one of the smaller ones? Is it grown perhaps as specialty coffee grows? Is there more emphasis on it now?
As I say, it's been grown since colonial days, and it's gone through phases, I guess. But the Ugandan government certainly sees coffee as being one of the main drivers of economic development. So they've set some very ambitious targets for what they hope will be the production level of coffee. Very ambitious targets. I'm not sure what they're doing to achieve those, but that they are very grateful for organisations like AgriEvolve and others. Of course, we're not just the only one. In fact, we're very much the newbies. But yeah, Uganda relies on the export earnings of coffee to help fund the running of the country. Cocoa for producing chocolate is there, but it's not as strong as, say, it is in Western Africa. Western Africa grows a lot more cacao for chocolate. East Africa, Uganda, grows a lot more coffee. Vanilla is an up-and-coming crop, very high value, but again, not an easy crop to grow. The pods on vanilla take something like 9 months to mature, so that's a long time. It takes a bit longer to establish the vanilla plants. The vanilla plant is a member of the orchid family, so you're planting vines, vanilla vines, and you have to grow them up, support, and then they flower, and you've got to then hand fertilize every flower on the vanilla plant. We're changing from a coffee to a vanilla podcast now. But yeah, the vanilla is providing an alternative. But this is diversification. Farmers need to rely or have the options of a range of different crops. And yeah, AgriEvolve, we didn't go to Uganda with coffee as our main objective. We went to be involved with agriculture. Coffee became our main focus for the first 4 or 5 years, and probably still is now. But even now, in the last few months, we've started looking at the vanilla sector. And again, there's a similar story. The people growing vanilla were finding they weren't getting a very good price. In fact, when I was last there in April, I met up with an old friend. This is somebody who I worked with back in the 80s. And he'd been growing vanilla, and he said his vanilla had been stolen. And this does happen. Thieves will go onto a person's land at night, just before the vanilla is ready, and literally cut it down, take it away. So people who grow vanilla tend to have very thick hedges or even barbed wire around their plot in order to try and protect it. So I thought somebody had been onto his land and stolen his vanilla. He said, no. He harvested it himself. He had supplied it to a local trader. The trader said he would pay him next week. The trader didn't. Trader's disappeared, run off with his vanilla. So this guy's vanilla has been stolen. When I said to my friend, Yokanir, I said, AgriEvolve was probably going to start getting involved with vanilla. He was delighted because he knew that if AgriEvolve bought his vanilla, we would pay. We would honour that transaction. And of course, we will do. So there's opportunities for us to play a key role in the vanilla sector as well.
And how do you find it with water? Because water is obviously a big issue everywhere around the world. But just to have a clean water and have a clean water for the people to drink, and also on the other hand have a good like use for like water, what you can use for the water either coffee or vanilla or anything. Is this one of the issues in Uganda, or is it not really?
It is certainly an issue, and again, it's a bit of a paradox. I mean, this is a mountainous area with glaciers and snow at the top. There is a lot of water. It rains pretty reliably a lot of the time. There are rainy seasons, 2 rainy seasons a year, 2 dry seasons, but there is a lot of rainfall. And there are a lot of streams cascading down the mountains, down the hillsides. Ironically, the farmers, the people living in this area, don't have very good access to tapped water. So they're collecting water much of the time from these streams, but they're also maybe bathing in these streams. So the open water in the streams is not necessarily clean or safe, and there are outbreaks of cholera and typhoid at times, not all the time, but
Well, I guess
they are not unknown.
It's not as bad as India, is it?
No, I don't think so. I've never been to India, but I don't think it's as bad.
I just seen a document last week about the Ganga River when they do
Right.
there with all the bodies and everything.
Dead bodies,
yeah, and which is like extremely
Yeah.
alarming.
Yeah.
I don't think so. This really happens there. I guess if somebody just bathing there and a little bit down from there, somebody using the water, it might be a little bit.
Yeah, but you think there are goats and animals and so on as well. So it's generally recognised that just to take drinking water from an open river or stream isn't the best way of getting your water. There are a lot of springs in the area, and you can cap a spring quite simply. You surround it with concrete rocks, you protect it so that nothing else gets in. And then from a collecting tank, you can pipe that water down the hillside using gravity to standpipes, to taps. That should be possible throughout the area, and certainly there are a significant number of systems like that where water is piped and people then collect from a standpipe. Very, very few people will have water in their house, or practically unheard of. They don't. The local people don't have flush toilets. The kitchens are often in a separate building anyway, but if they have a tap at all, it will be outside. So, but for somebody to have a tap on their own land exclusively for their use is quite rare. Most often, a village will maybe have 1 or half a dozen, if they're fortunate, standpipes, and you'll see queues of people waiting to use those standpipes.
That reminds me of our cottage in the woods we had when I was young. There was one pump for the whole village, and everybody was taking water from the pump. Which was very disturbing when you got. I think this might be very upsetting for people from Europe who are basically spoiled with having a tap in pretty much every room. And then you just kind of have to get the water, like in the morning, just kids will get the water, probably. That's just one of the other thing is how big is the child labor there? Is it very common, or I know they use the farmers trying to put the kids in the school, getting the kids in the school, but how much is it quite common there that people using their kids to help them in the harvest, or does the kids volunteer them to help their families?
Well, like with every farming family everywhere in the world, the children will be involved in some way. In this country, traditionally, the children would go and collect the eggs. And I worked on a farm when I was 12, 13, 14, just sort of helping. But we've recently been audited and approved under the Rainforest Alliance program, which is obviously very strict regarding child labour. So child labour is not allowed. We will not buy from farmers who openly use child labour. We obviously encourage farmers to send their children to school, but at the end of the day, when the children are home from school, if they are, if the coffee harvest is on, they may help in some small way, but certainly we don't allow the use of children in the production of coffee.
Might just take a toilet break here.
Yeah, let's have a break. 3, 2, 1, and then we go back. So, just another thing, Martin, I wanted to ask is, when we first met, you mentioned Kalingwe, which you said is coming pretty much next week here. It's very different there, isn't it? Like, to bring the coffee actually from there. Is this one of the challenges what you have? Like, to get coffee from actual farms into the processing station?
Yeah, we, as part of the service that we provide, we encourage farmers to bring their coffee to what we call a buying centre or a collecting centre. So throughout the whole region of the Rwenzoris, which, as I mentioned, 100 miles north to south, we have established buying centres. So farmers will take their coffee to these buying centres, and then we'll send trucks to pick up the coffee from those places and to bring them back to where we do the processing. So that's great if there are roads to those places, but then there are some communities where there are no roads. The ones that are higher up are also where the better coffee is, because the coffee quality improves with altitude. So Kalingwe is about 2,000 meters above sea level. Very nice coffee, but you can't get a truck all the way up. So we, 18 months, 2 years ago, we decided to bring some donkeys to the Rwenzoris. So donkeys are not normally seen. When I worked in Uganda, I never saw a donkey for 4 years. Donkeys are used and quite more common in the eastern side of Uganda and in Kenya. But people don't normally keep donkeys in the Rwenzoris. Anyway, we sent for some. We brought a truck full of donkeys all the way across Uganda, and we keep them in very good conditions. We have people who look after them, and those donkeys are great. They can carry up to about 100 kilos of coffee each. We've made very comfortable sort of saddlebags, and 50 kilos on either side, and donkey's very happy. So that system works very well. So in the morning, a team of maybe 5 or 6 donkeys will be taken up to Kalingwe and other places that are more distant. They walk up and then spend an hour or two having a good graze of the vegetation. I went with them once, and there's a football field, just a rough patch of grass at Kalingwe next to the school, and the donkeys were quite happy just munching their way around that whilst everybody sorted out the coffee. Then we loaded up the donkeys and walked them back down to the coffee station. It works really well. The farmers, again, very happy. The alternative is for the individual farmers to put a 30-kilo sack of coffee on their backs, on their shoulders, on their head, and to walk down with that themselves.
So how far is the distance normally from the Kalingwe?
Kalingwe is reasonably close, maybe only 4 or 5 miles, not too far. But some of the more distant places, you could be looking at walking 10, 15 miles.
With a 30-kilo sack on your back?
Yes. Down, and the people without boots on or hiking equipment, down land that is pretty steep. It's the foothills of the Rwenzoris, where most people live, are not dissimilar to the Lake District, where you and I are fortunate enough to live and work. But in the Rwenzoris, it's like Blencathra or Helvellyn or Skiddaw, but with people living all the way from top to bottom. So people are living and working on those sort of that steepness of land. They're growing their food crops. They're cultivating by hand with spades, djembes. It's not easy, and it's very traditional. The land's too steep for any type of machinery. People don't even use ox-drawn ploughs. It just doesn't happen. Everything is done by hand. So farmers are very tough, very hard-working. They're used to the physicality of daily existence. But And so, yeah, if there's no alternative, they will put 30 kilos of coffee on their backs and walk down to the buying centre, which may be lower down where the trucks can reach. Donkeys are doing that for them. They pay a small amount, obviously, as a part of a business, but the farmers are much happier to do that and to use their time more productively than walking up and down a mountain with coffee on their backs.
And the processing centres, what are the quality of those like? I've been to some processing centres where they use a lot of technology, a lot of machinery to sort beans perhaps, and I've been to some which are a lot more sort of manual and physical. So I wonder how much technology is used in processing centres in Uganda.
Well, yeah, there certainly are good machines available, and we do use imported machines. We're actually just now in the process of building a new processing centre, and we've got machinery on its way from Costa Rica. So traditionally the farmers, as I've said before, would pick their coffee, put it on the ground and until it was dry. So when you're processing, the first thing to try and do is to grade the incoming cherries. So the cherry is what you pick off the tree. Not real cherries, but that's what they're known as. The coffee cherry on the tree has 2 coffee beans inside it, but that's what's picked. So when they arrive at the processing place, the first thing to do is to use the water separator. So all the cherries get dunked into water. The ones that float are poorer quality, so they get skimmed off, and the heavier ones that sink, they're the top quality ones. So initially, that's a very simple process, done in a machine, but there is an immediate separation of good quality and poorer quality, top quality, second quality. So that's the first stage. Then in the natural process, those cherries just simply get put on beds for drying, raised beds to allow good ventilation. So for the natural process, it's pretty still low technology. For the washed coffee, the cherries go into a pulping machine which remove the outer mucilage, which is a byproduct, and leaves the 2 coffee beans surrounded by a parchment that is then dried on raised beds. There are also mechanical dryers. So although the top quality coffee is sun dried, and that's the coffee that we bring to the UK, but for lower grade coffee that's sold in bigger volumes at a more, for commercial coffee production, then that tends to be mechanically dried, again, just to give a very consistent product. The coffee can be dried in a matter of 2 or 3 days instead of being outside for 2 or 3 weeks. But that's just a different product, effectively, for a different market. And then when all the coffee is dried, it needs to be hulled. So the dried flesh in the natural process needs to be removed, and it goes into a big noisy machine that basically smashes the coffee cherry up. The beans are extracted, and then the dried chaff that remains is separated. And that is a byproduct, but again, it can be used. Sometimes it can be used to power the drying machines that are used for drying the commercial coffee. So, yeah, nothing's wasted. And in the wet process, the outer mucilage that's removed is a very good organic fertilizer and is returned to the farmers for them to put in their coffee fields.
Is there, because it's not that long time ago since I read about one coffee from Ethiopia which was processed with strawberry laces, just a sliced strawberries with it, which obviously added its flavor to the coffee through the process. Is this something which you ever done with the coffee, or is this something, or do you simply use the coffee as it is?
Mainly we just use it as it is. But you're saying that people added strawberries?
Yes.
Wow.
It was one of the expensive lots. We've seen it on one of the offers that we.
Yeah, I remember seeing that, and to me it feels a little bit like you're cheating. I quite enjoy drinking a coffee, and if it's fruity, it's naturally got that flavour.
Yeah.
I think when you add other ingredients in, it's perhaps not coffee anymore.
Well, yeah, there's a flavour, a strawberry flavour note is something that is quite often found in our Rwenzori coffee, and it's not because we've added strawberries.
Yeah,
That's good.
Yeah, they can grow many different things in Uganda, but strawberries probably not, because it's more of a temperate crop. It's not an ideal crop for the tropics. So we don't see strawberries. Mangoes, wonderful mangoes, but we don't see strawberries growing in Uganda. Though, no doubt, there may be in some places in big fancy greenhouses for the export market, possibly.
I'm just wondering how much it might be affecting, let's say, if you grow in, let's say, mango on the same farm, let's say, next to the coffee, how much can it affect the taste? Do you think there might be some possibility to do that? Or something?
Well, I don't know. You wouldn't imagine that it could be possible, but they're finding out so much these days about how plants communicate with each other and are interrelated. So it wouldn't surprise me, perhaps, if one plant can send these sort of enzymes and messages down its root system via all the fungal networks and picked up by other plants that can maybe affect the flavour in those other plants. Who knows? I think there's a lot of interesting research going on in this area. But for us, as you said, the fruity flavour notes from this coffee are very natural, and strawberry is one flavour note that often comes out, not every time, and that's because every crop is different. Every crop is in a different season, which probably has been more affected by the rainfall whilst that crop has been maturing on the plant. Now remember, 18 months, 2 years back, we brought in one lot that was intensely strawberry. You could open the bag and get this waft of strawberry. And a roaster I visited said that somebody opened a bag of this on the other side of their unit, 20, 30 yards away, and he could pick up this flavour, this scent of strawberries floating across the floor. So yeah, but then the same coffee from the same region, the next harvest maybe would have more of a blackcurrant note or jasmine or something else. So it's an agricultural product that varies, and again, that's the beauty and the complexity of it. So even this Kalingwe, the new Kalingwe that's coming, I can't guarantee that it's going to have the same flavour notes as the last one. It may have, a different acidity, slightly different. And again, it's because these aren't plantation farms where everything is regulated and things tend to be done the same year by year. We're talking about smallholder farmers producing, many hands involved in producing a crop from many different individual plots of land that come together. And of course, we can't say that the farmers who contributed the coffee to the Kalingwe batch one year are exactly the same as the next time. It all depends on so many different factors. So,
you recently broke off kind of from the bigger company, did you? You used to cooperate with one big company to help you import the coffee or export the coffee from Uganda.
Yeah.
So is it something like really fresh, or is it still, can you talk about it? Can you just tell us why did you decide to just go completely solo?
Well, yeah, as I said, when Johnny first arrived in Uganda, the local farmers said they wanted some help with their coffee. Johnny found this company in Kampala, came across them, talked to them, and it all happened. They encouraged us to get into this. So we've been working with them for 5 years. But it's been very much us working with them, and in many ways we were like an agent. We were doing work for them, but the coffee was belonged to this other company. They were the exporters. They provided the finance and the infrastructure to make it all happen. We felt, as we gained experience, that we wanted to be independent and to do this all ourselves. So instead of working on behalf of a bigger company, we felt it was better and right to do this ourselves. So we have now formally parted from that other company, the established exporter. We have our own export license. We're building a new coffee station, which is AgriEvolve's coffee station. The farmers are very pleased. That we are there and investing in a new factory, we want this coffee station to be the best in East Africa. We have high standards of ourselves and the farmers.
That's great.
So we are going to do all we can to further improve all parts of the process.
So was it hard to separate from the company?
Or
is it like something like, is it? I know you've been probably cooperating with them last couple of years, or last few years, let's say 5 years. So you've been probably, were they all right to just let you just separate from them and not working as agent? Or
I think they would have preferred us to stay with them. We gave notice that we wanted to leave, and I think they were very pleased with the work we've been doing for them, and perhaps weren't so pleased that we wanted to leave and become an independent organisation, because in effect we're now going to be working in competition with these other people. So they're still running the coffee station that we had been running, and we're now building our own, and we'll be running that. We have a very good team of Ugandan colleagues. We have a 60-strong team. We have field officers who are working with the farmers. We have machine operators who are based at the factory operating the washer separators and the drying machines. We have a quality team. We have 6 people in our quality team, because that's very important. All of this coffee coming in from so many different locations and sources, you have to be very, very keen, very, very attentive to the qualities. Just because somebody brings some coffee along, it doesn't mean that it is good enough for us to buy or to offer the top price. So all of the coffee has to be assessed physically and through cupping to make sure that it's going to make the grade and prove to be of sufficient quality to sell for a good price in the UK or wherever else we'll be selling coffee. Yeah, it's wonderfully, fascinatingly complex. That's the only word. Coffee is complex, and it's a lot more complex the longer you're involved with it, the more complex you realize that it is. And this is before it's bagged, exported, and all the rest of it. And then, of course, when it reaches the UK, it enters the lives of the roasters, and different people will roast it in different ways, and again extract different flavour notes, perhaps use it in different ways, as we've already alluded to. So it's not just nuts and bolts or tins of baked beans that are the same. You can open a tin of Heinz baked bean, and it's always going to be the same, isn't it?
Yeah.
From when I started eating baked
the coffee
beans,
is a bit different, isn't it?
Over 50 years ago, no doubt, my mother would give us baked beans every Monday evening for our tea, and they still taste the same. But coffee is not like that, is it? It changes from season to season, and it's fascinating. But yeah, we're going to be looking at further improving the qualities. Our coffees regularly score 85. We have the potential to get those up to 90, I believe. Why not? We will be aiming to do that in conjunction with the farmers, for the benefit of the farmers, for the benefit of the community. And yes, all these new, weird and wonderful, perhaps, ways of fermenting the coffee, carbonic maceration and all the rest. We will be looking into that. We've done some. It's difficult to get a consistent product. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it works really well, and you think, wow, this is pretty interesting. Yeah. You repeat it, and you get stuff that coming out that
I read
isn't quite right.
I read one book about wine processing, and obviously there is so much, because the two things are quite similar in the fact that you can just use the wine techniques to actually make a process of the coffee. So the carbonic maceration is just the first of them, which is normally the carbonic maceration, because I'm from the region where it's wine grown quite well originally. So the carbonic maceration is just a method what they use to get, it's not used for the majority of the wine, it's for the very, very seasonal wine.
Right.
So it's just wine which you will drink up to a month since you done this and since you finished the process, basically. So I think there's many other methods which can be put in the coffee processing from the wine.
Yes.
Just kind of set apart.
Absolutely, you can ferment with yeasts, or you can ferment without yeasts. Just that's two options for a start, and then different types of yeasts or different periods of time. I've seen reports of people double, triple fermenting. They ferment it and take it out and put it back in, and so on. And when it works and it works well, you get a product that has a particularly high value. So lots of experimenting to be done.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the emphasis over the coming years in the coffee industry. I think we've got a good handle now on, producing the coffee on the barista end, and the roasting as well has come a long way. And I think the emphasis in going forward in the future is going to be on the farms and the quality they're using, those techniques, experimental techniques you mentioned, is going to be a lot of the innovation going forward, I think.
And certainly I think the modern customer wants to know a lot more about where the food and beverages come from. So providing that traceability is very important. It's not easy when you're dealing with literally thousands of small-scale coffee farmers, but we are registering. It all sounds a very formal word, doesn't it, registering? But we register the names of all the farmers we work with. We take GPS location. We walk around their plot. We know the land that they have, the number of coffee trees they have, the level of production that they would expect to have. Our agronomists, our field officers go and meet with farmers in groups and provide the training, the advice for them to improve. We provide training and from an environmental point of view as well, because of course that's also vitally important. So it's providing training so that the land that an individual has is kept in the best possible condition, rather than perhaps suffering from soil erosion or degrading in other ways. So we're encouraging coffee farmers to plant trees. Certain species of trees provide really nice shade, and it's generally accepted that coffee grown under shade again produces a better quality taste. That's because the ripening process is slowed down when coffee is grown under shade, and as that process slows down, more flavors are imparted into the coffee beans. That's the theory. Planting trees is good. All of the people we work with, I would say 99%, still use firewood for their cooking. So by planting more trees, that was obviously also producing firewood. It's a reasonably it's a reasonably good area for trees, though a lot of trees have been felled in the past to open up the land for farmers to use. Higher up the mountain, there's the Rwenzori Mountain National Park, which is a UNESCO site. So that is very well protected. And if you look at aerial photographs, it looks a bit like the Amazon. There really are a lot of trees. It's solid virgin forest higher up. But lower down on the lower foothills where people are living, there is more of a challenge regarding trees. They could certainly do with more. We are not just saying to farmers, plant trees. We are growing trees ourselves. We have encouraged a few entrepreneurs to set up tree nurseries. We've provided them with the inputs required. We've asked them to grow, say, 10,000 trees. We will then buy those trees and supply them to the farmers. So we're setting up, encouraging small-scale business as part of this. And of course, with carbon credits these days, there's a significant opportunity to get involved with that. If farmers are planting trees which absorb carbon and there is a value on that, then for them it's a product, it's a crop. So they should be getting some reward for doing that. And trees in the tropics grow a lot faster than they do here in Cumbria, where often you see trees growing a few inches a year, and the tropics are growing a few meters a year. So there's fantastic opportunity for capturing carbon and hopefully helping in some way towards the climate change crisis.
So when we're back to the UK, finally, we've been in Uganda for quite a while now. When we're back here, you moved to Lake District not a long time ago. How do you find it so far to living in the lakes?
It's great. Yeah, we moved 3 years ago. So when we came back from Uganda at the end of the 80s, we ended up with a young family in East Yorkshire, and I was more involved with the horticultural sector for 25 years. But then as Johnny was getting established in Uganda, it seemed a good time to move out of that, to spend more time helping Johnny. Well, it just sort of happened, just kept on getting more and more messages, please can I do this, please can I do that. So I ended up, quite involved with what Johnny was doing, and enjoyed going to visit Johnny in those very early years. And then when it got to the point where we were decided to bring some coffee to the UK, well, it was a case of then getting out and about and finding a good market, which has been a great joy and interest to do. And we took the opportunity to move over to Cumbria with my wife and I both enjoyed walking in the fells. We grew up in Lancashire, so we'd often be popping up to the Lake District in all weathers. And now when we're living in the Lake District, we can sort of just stay in if it's raining and enjoy the fells in more pleasant weather conditions.
So but how often do you actually go on the fells? Because I found that quite a lot of people who actually live in Lake District doesn't really go on the fells.
Yeah, it's surprising actually when, because there's always things to do around the house, and there's always something to be doing within the coffee for my work. I mean, I guess originally I was maybe just doing a few hours, but now I'm finding that most days I'm having to sort of be in the office dealing with orders coming and going, and doing a lot of different things, and still supporting Johnny and the team in Uganda. We have frequent calls on WhatsApp and Teams. It's moving from almost back into a full-time occupation, which is great. But yeah, it is interesting that living there in the lakes in a nice spot, sometimes it's enough to be there without having to go and walk up a fell, perhaps sometimes. Though it's always lovely to even just walk up our local fells, but we're probably doing less walking. When we visited the lakes before, as a visitor, you just get out and do it, and you spend all your time walking at fells. Living here, it's slightly different. And I've certainly been meeting a lot of people, I think a lot of local folk who've lived in the lakes all their lives, perhaps haven't ever been up a fell, because
I think this is
it's something that the tourists do and not the locals.
It's quite common. I know a few people who've never been on a fell here.
Yeah.
Or at maximum they just drove behind a Latwick and just went from a Latwick car park on the top.
Right. Yes.
Might be the most common. So which one is your favorite hill? Do you have any favorite spot, any favorite hill where you would like to go, or where you've been, or?
Well, we have, my wife and I, over the last 5 or 6 years, have completed the Wainwrights, so that's going up every one of the 214 fells that feature in Wainwright's wonderful guides. So that was fascinating, and it was a good discipline. So yeah, without something like that, you'd possibly tend to go up the same ones, or a small number, but to have the aim of going up all 214 is a good discipline, and we enjoyed that very much.
How did you manage to climb up to High Toe? That was the worst hill for me to ever do. It's one of the Wainwrights. You have the high seat and then High Toe just behind Walla Crack. So you go to Walla Crack, you go to Blaeberg Fell, high seat, and then it's High Toe before you climb down to the town, a little town.
Right.
Do you remember this?
I don't remember.
It's extremely boggy hill. I left my shoes there.
Right. Okay. Well, bog is, you get used to that.
I have to walk down without the shoes.
Because they got stuck in the bog.
It just got stuck in it. It was the worst experience ever from the Lake District.
Yes. And of course, I guess we all question the why Wainwright chose some hills and ignored other ones, because sometimes a Wainwright, one of his chosen fells, seems to be far inferior to another one that's very close by. But you certainly encounter vast areas of bogs when you're doing this, and that's part of it, I guess.
So if there would be sunny afternoon and you could choose one fell where you would like to go and make a coffee, what coffee would it be and what hill would it be?
Well, of course, it would have to be Ugandan from the Rwenzoris, and any of the naturals. I really have got used to and enjoy drinking the naturals, so I would take the current natural, whichever was freshest in stock. Which hill? I've always liked Blencathra, just behind where you are here. It's a great place. But it's a very popular hill, and rightly so. And there are lots of different ways up it, and I've had some very memorable ascents of Blencathra. It's got a great position. But where I live over on the eastern side, there are some sort of lesser known fells there that we've got to know very well, because we can just walk out of our back door and enjoy those. Maybe not quite as stunning, a bit lower. I've enjoyed every single one. They're all unique, they're all different. Blencathra is possibly one of my main favourites, but there are some of the smaller ones that have again provided very enjoyable walks and expeditions. Even ones like Little Mel and Great Mel.
I found the best views from the smaller ones, because if you are on the top of Scafell Pike, everything's below you basically.
Yes.
So you have a view, but it doesn't look as good on a picture or in the, so it's best to just get to, Castle Head, which is the smallest little hill on the side of the lake, and you have all the view of the lake.
Absolutely.
Absolutely beautiful.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't rate Scafell or Scafell Pike as my favourites at all. Very much prefer the lower down ones.
Yeah, Scafell is terrible.
Yeah.
Right. Anything else today? Do you think we have everything?
I think that's everything, yeah.
That's great. That's great. Well, thank you, Martin, for coming.
You're very welcome. It's always great to talk about coffee. Every time, when you share with other people, you get new ideas and thoughts, and you're sometimes challenged to think things through in a new way. So it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Where can people find you on social media? Do you have any profiles on the... does AgriEvolve or Rwenzori have a profiles on Instagram?
Well, yeah, we have two accounts on Instagram. Rwenzori Coffee, it's RW, starts RWEN. That's the one I do, and you're making me feel guilty because I know I haven't posted for about 2 months. Anyway, must do a new post soon. And then we have an AgriEvolve site that my daughter Beth, who's also involved in business quite a lot, and so she tends to do all the posting on that one. So yeah, 2 sites, maybe a slightly different angle from each one, but both of them, a good number of photos now, and pictures and things showing all of the activities that we've been talking about.
That's great. Thank you very much for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Hey, stop just there. Don't switch us off just yet. Did you like this podcast? So please click the like button down on the bottom so the platforms would know that you like it and will start to recommend you the other episodes in the future. And if you didn't like this, just please let us at least know in the comments what you didn't like or something like that. And if you want to support us, please look at darkhouse.co.uk/shop, where you can buy some of the coffees we talk about. We're also offering you a little discount because you finished to listen to the episode until the end, which is podcast1. So if you put this discount code in, you will just get 10% discount of all the coffees. Thank you and see you next time.